Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Apostate Aladdin,
And I'm Secular Spirit,
and whether you're watching my channel,
or my channel.
you're watching one of the best ex-Muslim channels on YouTube.
So please consider subscribing to his channel, my channel, or why not both our channels? It's just a quick click. So go ahead and do it.
Nailed it. So, what we're going to be talking about today is dating as a Muslim, as an ex-Muslim, or anything in between, because a lot of our experiences are pretty common, in those categories. And we'll be sharing some of our stories. We'll be taking some comments in the live chat if you want to talk about your experiences. And if you're someone who's non-Muslim, but you are dating a Muslim or an ex-Muslim, some of this might be relevant to you as well. Or maybe we'll do a separate stream in the future, just specifically focused on those folks. So where do you want to begin today?
So much to talk about. I just wanted to say thanks to Kat, by the way, for saying that we were rehearsing that intro. Thank you, Kat. It only took the one rehearsal, the one dry run, so I think we did pretty well. I mean, I think what might be an interesting place to start, especially for people who've been following us for a long time, and it's the reason why we had the idea for this, is our own personal experiences of dating as ex-Muslims. Just for anyone watching to know, what happened was, off air, we were talking about some of our worst experiences, I guess you could say. And you have some mind-blowing ones. I have some weird ones, but yours are, yeah. So
Hey,
putting
don't
the
hype it
pressure
up
on
too
you.
much. Yeah, let's not oversell right away. So okay, all right, fine. I'll start with one. So I don't know where to begin because I've been trying to find love, companionship, a relationship for a while. Right now I'm happily in a relationship, but during my journey out of faith, I was still also interested in companionship. So at many different stages of my journey, I was a different person. Presenting to my partner, to myself, the guilt that I felt about dating in general, that varied a lot. But I'll tell you a story from not too long ago when I already had this YouTube channel. I'm an ex-Muslim. I don't feel guilty about, dating somebody or, trying to have a relationship. And I matched with someone on a dating app who was Middle Eastern. And she seemed very, I don't know how to really articulate this. She didn't seem like the very religious type. You can't really judge a book by its cover, but I mean, the way that she dressed, for example, is not very conservative. It wasn't also not conservative. It was just obviously like no hijab,
Yeah.
makeup, all that kind of stuff, which I'm not judging people for, but I could tell right away this doesn't strike me as the kind of person who, is really gung ho about religion. Um, but in my bio, there was a section for spiritual beliefs or religion, and I had atheist agnostic. And I've spoken about that before, so I'm not going to get into it right now. But I wanted to make it clear, not because I want to discuss this topic with everyone I meet, but because we need to be sort of on the same page about this, especially if someone looks like, they're from a Middle Eastern background. If they value religion very much, that's not really going to work for me or for them. So to be extra clear, when we were discussing just texting, I mentioned to her that what I do for work at the time is I help people who have left religion, left Islam specifically. And she said, "Oh, wow, that's so cool," and so on. And then we decided to agree at a restaurant slash bar, which was another indication that she doesn't seem very religious. Um, and then when we met, within the first few minutes, the misunderstanding was cleared up very quickly. She thought I meant that I help people who have left Islam return to Islam. So she was meeting a Dawa bro, is what she thought, at a bar, and she was gonna have a drink too. She didn't that day for some reason or another, but she's the kind of person who also who drinks alcohol. So her position on religion was very confusing. Where she told me, for example, that she wants to raise the kids religious. She actually wants to go back to the Middle East because it's better in so many ways and so on, which is confusing to me. Why are you here and romanticizing a different life that you're not living right now? But anyway, it was a civil sort of hangout. Nothing came of it, of course. Both of us just kind of ghosted each other right after. It was just funny to me that I tried my best to make myself clear, and she thought I meant help people return to Islam. Which, if you are to believe the comments, there are a lot of people who watch my videos and say, "Well, because of you, mashallah, my strength, alhamdulillah, has my faith has gone stronger."
So
So
technically, you have been leading people back to the
maybe,
faith. Yeah.
maybe, but yeah, that's one of my experiences.
The thing that's so funny about that is if you were ever to do like a sitcom like the Aladdin show, which I highly support you doing, that could be the perfect premise for the first episode, and you wouldn't have to change a single thing.
Yeah, my you know how they say my life's a movie? Well, mine's a sitcom. So um,
That's awesome.
yeah,
You know, for me, it was kind of weird because I didn't really have to do that whole navigating the challenge of being ex-Muslim for years until years after I left. Because when I left, I was younger than you. I was pretty young. I had just turned 18. I was around 18, and I hadn't dated at all at that point. And for the next year or two, it was still trying to come out of that whole mentality of, you know, well, dating is meant for when you're older, when you're an established adult and you're ready for marriage. You know, you have the income and you're prepared to support a family and all that.
mhm,
So it wasn't really something that occupied my time. It was more the existential stuff of how do I even find meaning in this life before even thinking about finding like a romantic partner or any of that kind of stuff. And it it started hitting me gradually once I had become more comfortable with myself being, you know, an atheist, no longer being a Muslim. That it was a really hard obstacle because, you know, being an immigrant to Canada, away from my family, and you know the connections that can sometimes come from, you know, friend of your cousin, or you know all that kind of stuff of someone that you could potentially date. Uh, I realized that most immigrants, what they do is they start dating people from their background. So I'm Palestinian, so go into the Palestinian community in Toronto where I live, and you know look around there and see if I can date someone. I realized that's not so easy,
mhm.
and uh, I think you can guess why that's not so easy, because there's that question hanging over the air. Do I mention when I meet this person that I'm no longer a believing Muslim? And do I go even further and say, not only am I no longer believing Muslim, I'm actually an atheist? When all my life I was raised to believe that if you don't believe in Allah, you're going to hell. So what do you do there? Tell me.
Well, you can't. Well, you can, but you probably shouldn't pretend, because I've seen this happen before. I have so many stories that I've heard, people in my life and people who've told me as Aladdin, where somebody they know or themselves, they were unsure about where they stand with faith, or they know they don't believe, but there's still some sort of, cultural Muslim. They still identify with the community and so on. And they downplay that to their future partner or their current partner. Sometimes they're
Yeah.
even married. Sometimes they have kids at that point. It's not always as clear cut as, someone being selfish by deceiving somebody else. Sometimes it's just too late, to have that conversation, or at least they think so. So I think it's better to put everything out there, especially if you're meeting people for the first time. And even though there might seem like there are advantages, or, that yearning for being part of the community or having what the others seem to have, you shouldn't do it on based on false premises, because someday it's going to haunt you and them, and it's not fair to them either.
I think if you're talking to 20-year-old me, 21-year-old me, I wouldn't have been able to articulate what you just said.
Hmm.
But I was thinking I had this discomfort of just pretending I was still Muslim. And I also had this discomfort of just blatantly saying, yeah, I'm an atheist. I think I don't think Allah is real. So what's the easier thing to do? And I'm sure this is something others have done. Just don't date at all.
Hmm.
You don't have to deal with that whole issue whatsoever. And what started happening to me was, uh, I avoided people from Muslim backgrounds. So I inevitably had friends and stuff, like more superficial connections in my university years. You know, people I play soccer with, that kind of thing. But in terms of deeper relationships, whether friendships or romantic things, I just didn't go that way because I knew those questions would arise. And something I've talked about on my channel is how one of my best friends in university converted from Christianity to Islam uh, while we were friends. So I
Hmm.
actually, while I was questioning or beginning to question, I taught him how to pray. And then he really went into the devout deep end, and he was starting to chastise me for not praying. And so I had to phase out that friendship, and it felt like this is going to be an issue in any romantic relationship with someone who's from a Muslim background as well. So I I just didn't look for, if there was someone who was from a Palestinian background or a potential Muslim background, I didn't even try.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see that too. And but that's not feasible in the long term. Just not dating uh, at all, or just avoiding that conversation. But even if you do, I mean, there's so many directions we could take this, because
Yeah.
if you stop looking at people from your cultural, ethnic, whatever nationality background, then that you're still also going to face a lot of challenges if you date somebody from a completely different culture. Challenges in the relationship, and in between cultural misunderstandings and so on, but also challenges with your family and possibly theirs. So there's so much to go over here. Um, but I'll tell you, I'll start reading some of the comments, because
Yeah, yeah.
some of the
Let's
live chat,
hear. Yeah.
because some of these are really interesting, some are tragic, but I still want us to discuss them anyway. Um, Hello You says, I left Islam too, but I'm still attracted to Moroccan men. It's going to be an issue, I think. That's called the self-destructive habits. Uh, so yeah, I understand that sometimes we want what we can't have, or sometimes we want what we want, but don't let it lead you to bad places in life. Yeah, I mean, not all Moroccan men are bad or anything like that. I'm just saying, don't date a Muslim if you're not a Muslim, just because they happen to be a Moroccan man. That's your type. So,
Well, the thing, just to take a brief pause, what I would add there. So maybe this person is just talking about physical attractiveness, but I think the thing that's really a big challenge is let's talk about me, for example, Palestinian background. There's so much more you can connect with when it's for me to connect with a Palestinian than someone who, let's say, is, I don't know, whatever, Russian or Australian or whatever it happens to be, because you have the shared language, you have the shared experiences. Maybe you too were forced to watch the funeral of Yasser Arafat when you were a kid. True story. I was forced to watch it. Uh, and just like things like that, like the food, the music. And when you lose those kinds of connections, it's almost like you're starting from scratch in building a connection with someone from a different culture. It definitely makes it more challenging, so I understand it from that aspect too.
yeah. Um, what do I want to say about that? It's yeah, some people have types. Sometimes it's actually about compatibility in other ways. At the end of the day, you have to do an assessment. I know it seems too calculated, but on some level, you have to assess, is this good for me overall? Because it shouldn't be about pleasing, other people in your life. It shouldn't be about what is expected of you. It should be about what works for you and your partner best. So keep that in mind. Um, Here's Sparkle Jump Rope Queen says, I became an ex-Muslim, and my ex-husband chose Islam over me, then begged me to get back with him and revert again, and he offered me to be his second wife. I had to politely decline. I don't know why you had to be polite about that, but I'm glad you declined.
Also, was that offer like to sweeten the deal? You can be my second wife. So
Maybe
is that like, so you have to share less of the load? There's someone else to do the laundry. I don't know what that means.
you share chores. Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said no. Uh, Dance Y2K. Wow, you must be old. I'm assuming. Thank you for the super chat.
Wow,
Says,
ageist.
I mean, I'm old. I know what Y2K is. They say, can you do an apologetics discussion of Muslim Lanterns lecture? Islam and the West, are they compatible? I think it's better you do this with secular spirit. Would you be interested in something like that?
I haven't really found Muslim Lanterns approach that interesting, but there's a lot that you could get into there. So yeah, why not?
Maybe. No commitment yet. It's just that he spews so much nonsense that it would take us forever to dissect, 10 minutes. So I don't know how long this material that you're telling us about is. So we'll check it out. Thank you for mentioning it. Also, I want to show you guys, two of my cats are right here. It's just out of camera. I'm going to have a cat cam. I'm working on it. And no one has commented on it yet, but do you notice anything different? Anything at
I was
all?
waiting to see if someone was going to comment on it.
Yeah, nobody has yet. Anyway,
People are just oh, there's plants and some books in the background. Everything's the same.
same, but different. Um, yeah, thank you, Jerwalk, for reminding people. Please like, comment, subscribe, and comment once the video is done being live. Anyway, let's take another comment, and then we'll get back to. I guess it's a topic related to this. Ex-Muslim Asia says, but if you do meet an ex-Muslim from the opposite sex and have, or the same sex if you're into that, and have chemistry and both like each other, cherish them for life because the chance of that happening is once in a trillion. What do you think about that?
Well, like the thing that's so hard about it is, how do you figure out that the other person is an ex-Muslim in a way in which you don't risk something, especially if you're from like a tight-knit community where the word gets out. Because I think the worst case scenario is you're really interested in someone and you're really vibing with them, and maybe it's someone who drinks alcohol and eats pork, I don't know, and then you reveal it, and then soon enough you're getting a call from your parents saying, do you know what this person told us, that you don't that you no longer believe, and then you're in a whole heap of trouble. So that's always the danger. So I think that's why it's 1 in a trillion, because this is the thing. It's almost like a sci-fi kind of movie where you're wondering if someone else is on the good side or the bad side, and the other person's thinking the same thing as well, and all of you are just pretending to be something you're not, because if you spill the beans and it's the wrong person,
Well,
you're
I
done.
see your point, but I'm going to take it in a completely different direction. Even if you somehow, like you said, someone drinking alcohol or eating pork is not always an indication that that person is not Muslim. Sometimes they are, but they're not really practicing right now, but they'll switch up later. So you really need to have an explicit conversation about this. But even if you somehow know for a fact the other person is an ex-Muslim, the commenter had made it seem, let me find the comment again. They made it seem like that is the most important thing when it comes to finding a partner. And in many situations, in many countries and communities, it might feel that way. Like this can solve all your problems. If you're both ex-Muslims, you understand each other, when it comes to religion, and you can both pretend together to both of your families, then life can go on with as little friction as possible. And sometimes that works, but don't let that be the main criteria, because you could be with an ex-Muslim who is not the right fit for you, or someone who still has a lot of
Exactly.
negative ideas, or harmful or maybe sexist ideas that they've carried over from religion, even though they're not religious anymore. Or sometimes they have a lot of unresolved problems because of the process of leaving religion, or because of how their family's treating them, and so on and so forth, that now become part of the relationship as well. So that's not the only criteria for a good partner. So sometimes you do have to let that person go, even if it feels like it's a perfect match. And believe me, I also have experience with that. I've dated an ex-Muslim before, and it didn't work out, even though on paper it should have. And even before I knew what ex-Muslim was, even before I left religion, I met someone who, as Muslims like to say, the right ratio of halal to haram to me, or haram to halal, or whatever it is, where they're not extremely religious on the same degree as I am. And they were not in my city, but we both seemed to want to make it work, because we seemed to like each other. But also a big component of it, even though we had only spent a week around each other, was we knew that both of our families are Muslim, and we can pretend for the rest of our lives. So if we're together, we can be, even halal, we get married and everything's fine. And then the families don't have to know anything. Um, and that is sad, that is the main, I don't know, characteristic that you'd be looking for. But it's also understandable, because if you're in a country where it's a Muslim majority country, that could be a lifesaver. So yeah, I yapped a lot, but I hope I answered that as best as I could.
Could you highlight this question that Gerwak asked in the live chat? I've
Sure.
starred it. You should be able to
Sure.
find it.
Let me find it. So Gerwak asked, do you think dropping that you just met an ex-Muslim would be safe if you're trying to figure someone out? What do you mean?
So I think Gerwak, you can correct us if correct me if I'm mistaken. But I think what Gerwak's trying to say is you mention let's say you're hanging out with someone that you're interested in, and you say, oh, by the way, I found that I met this person that I grew up with. You're making this up at this point. I met this person that I grew up with, and he actually left Islam, and I thought that was really interesting. And then if the other person says, and they will go to the depths of hell, and Allah will, if they just start spouting whatever, okay, now you know. If they're indifferent, or they say, oh yeah, yeah, I actually left a few years ago myself, then you're golden, and that way you're not outing yourself necessarily.
Hmm. I mean, there are ways to go about it. You could, that's a good way to do it, like a litmus test for what do you
Yeah.
think about this? Not maybe not as direct, but just sharing the news that somebody you know did this or that. Same goes with, I think some people like to ask about what do you think about gay people, for example, because that could be a litmus test for a lot of other sort of beliefs that have transferred from religion or culture, whether or not the person is religious. So you got to be careful about what you share with people you don't know. But depends on where you are. There are countries that are, not a Muslim majority country, secular countries, where you are not part of an overly controlling community, and you get to just tell a person that you're romantically interested in, "I'm not a Muslim anymore. Are you?" And if they say, "Yes, I am," you just part ways. It's that simple
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
some. Yeah. There's a comment here that is Yasmin says, let's make a secret dating app. The reason we're even doing this live stream is started off because of a dating app conversation. Remember?
Yeah.
What were we talking about?
What was this? I I can't remember what's. I think it might have been Muzz, Muzz, but
Possibly.
we were talking about how if they had an option for someone to say that they were, not even that they were an ex-Muslim because that was too far-fetched, but to just say you're a non-practicing Muslim, so you still believe, but you don't really pray, you don't really do anything, you don't go to the mosque. And we both, I mean, I haven't used that app, I don't know if you have or not, but we both felt that was unlikely, and then that got us thinking how difficult it would be for an ex-Muslim to just date someone from their background.
Yeah, I have used or tried, let's say, a couple of apps that were like that were more, I suppose, Muslim focused or even sort of immigrant or third culture focused years ago. And I don't know if their user base has increased now, but back when I tried them, it quickly showed me like a list of just like 10 people in my entire city. So it wasn't really all that popular. But there were options I remember for setting like how religious you are. And on the low end, there was no label as ex-Muslim, but there was like non-practicing or something like that, or cultural Muslim. So that is I think is a smart idea. There are Muslims who are so religious they wouldn't even be on the dating app, but there are Muslims who are somewhere on the spectrum, and I think it's good to know what you can filter for, what where the other person's at. But it's still not a big enough user base as far as I know to actually effectively
Mm,
link ex-Muslims together or cultural Muslims.
no.
Some people have luck with that, or even finding each other on other apps that aren't Muslim specific, like
Someone
that.
mentioned a subreddit that I've heard of actually before. Let me see if I can find that comment.
Let's not plug it here.
Not
It is a,
necessarily, sorry,
yeah.
not necessarily to plug it, but just to say that it exists.
Yeah, it does exist. We're not condoning it because
No, 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 no.
meeting people
Definitely
on
not.
the internet, especially a faceless subreddit, is not advisable. Just be careful, your own safety and so on. Uh, but there are ways. But like I said, it's the focus shouldn't be let me meet an ex-Muslim unless that truly is the only way you could find partnership in your situation, which unfortunately for some people it is. But let's answer this question then. Doll Girl Forever Doll says, why not date non-Muslims? What do you think about that?
Why not? Yeah, I mean that's what I ended up doing. Yeah,
I,
yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't. Absolutely. Some people feel drawn towards dating people from a Muslim background either because they want to pretend to be Muslim outwardly to their families, or because they still want to share the language that they speak, for example, as a first or second language, or the culture associated with their country or something of the sort. And sometimes it's for appearances, like I mentioned. But you could date people from other cultures and other backgrounds, which you should. Um, the problem with that becomes the extra picky and extra scrutinizing family members who are, will ostracize you for that. And I still think it is worth it. I think every situation is different, but if you find love and you know for sure that this relationship is worth that sacrifice, you shouldn't be living your life for somebody else. So if marrying a non-Muslim or being with a non-Muslim is what makes you happy, do not dump them and go find a Muslim just to please your family. Um, and I feel like I have to say this because this breaks my heart every time I hear about it. I have non-Muslim friends, not from a Muslim background, who have dated Muslim, especially Muslim men, who, they're all like cool. They drink, they party, they do whatever, they sleep with them, all that stuff. Maybe sometimes even for years. I have one friend who's been in a relationship since COVID. It's been 4 or 5 years now, knowing that it will end someday because the guy in his 30s still can't tell his parents that she exists and eventually will go marry either somebody that they arranged for or somebody they matched make, for him. Sometimes even people jokingly say he's going to go marry his cousin. That actually happens sometimes, unfortunately. So if you're that guy, please do not waste other people's time and their lives. Figure out how to deal with your family, and you can't live like that to please your family forever. If you're able to, even if it's going to take some work, you have to be your own person.
Yeah, yeah. See, this is the thing, and we touched upon this a little bit earlier, but I think it's worth expanding on. It's the not necessarily to do with an ex-Muslim who hasn't come out to their parents and how that might affect you, but it has to do with, I would say, the kind of nebulous nature that being an ex-Muslim can have. Just not everyone is, I think Islam, I don't have any good reason to believe Islam is true. I am an atheist, and it's as simple as that for me. I figured it all out. I thought about all the things, and I don't have major doubts anymore. There's a lot of ex-Muslims that are, a bit shakier. They waver. They might go back to Islam. They might become a bit more religious. They might just say that they're Muslim again. It kind of goes up and down, and it really depends when you're dating, same as with anything else, where you meet those people at what point in their lives. And to just share one experience that I had, and I think I told you about this one, Aladdin. So I met someone who was from, she wasn't Palestinian, but from somewhere close by. Uh, I mentioned that I was an atheist first time we met. She didn't strike me as someone who was religious at all. She would sometimes talk about how her parents were a bit more strict. She's someone who lived alone in Canada, didn't wear hijab, and we went on a couple of dates. And then what happened was we were playing this game. I'm not sure if anyone knows what that game is called. It's like a card game. And the idea is each card is like a different subject. And then when you pull the card, you talk about something that relates to the card and you personally. So it's a way of getting to know each other better. Have you ever heard of that game before?
No, but I understand what the
Okay.
premise is, more or less.
Okay. So we pulled out this card, and it was something like, what is something that you are afraid of when it comes to the future? And I can't remember what I said. Maybe something about climate change. I can't 100% remember what it was. But then it was her turn. Someone says Cards Against Humanity. It was not Cards Against Humanity. So it was her turn, and when she spoke, she said something like, "I'm worried that I'm going to hell, and that everyone around me is also going to go to hell." And I was like, "Whoa." Okay. This was internally. I tried not to express my shock that much because it really did feel like it came out of nowhere. And I asked her, so out of curiosity, you know that I don't believe in God and anything. Do you think I'm going to hell? And she said, most likely. And we kind of moved on from that moment. But for me, from my end, it kind of just, I lost my motivation to keep pursuing that connection because I felt like uh, not necessarily that, oh, it's completely doomed, but this person is going through uh, a lot of things spiritually. Like she hasn't
Mhm.
resolved a lot of things, and maybe some guilt. She had a difficult relationship with her mother, and I had started my YouTube channel already, and I didn't feel it would be appropriate for me to kind of go in with all my beliefs and all my arguments on someone I barely know. And I don't know if it was right or wrong, but my decision ultimately was to just kind of like I didn't ghost her because we had seen each other a bunch of times, but to just let it fizzle out. And I think she must have felt the same way because that's what happened from her end too.
Mhm.
And that was that.
Yeah. Well, it's probably for the best.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I've also matched with someone from a Muslim background who was sort of in between things, and still dealing with some of those fears, or um, even if not necessarily that, but just hasn't labeled themselves as not the right is not the right way to put this, because I don't care about them having the label ex-Muslim, but they don't necessarily know where they are, where they're still in between multiple camps, and they exhibit some of the qualities and opinions of many different opposing ideas. So I think for such people it's better to let them have their space to deal with it, and you should never be the person who's facilitating that transition for them. That's not a healthy relationship to have. You can't be part of their journey and their partner as well.
It's so difficult, especially when
With
you know
caveats, but
yeah, of course, when you're already in a relationship with someone, and let's say they're an ex-Muslim in the beginning, and then they shift into something more closer to their former faith, and you have to navigate. Do I say anything? Do I challenge their newfound faith? Should I just take a step back and let them figure it out for themselves? So difficult to navigate that, especially when you have kids.
yeah. Haram Doodles is here, by the way.
Hey,
Uh,
Haram Doodles. She said she might stop by. Glad she made it.
Yeah, you should check out her Instagram page. It is awesome. She says, "I have definitely met Muslim man babies who are scared to ruffle the feathers at home by choosing a partner on their own, and or they expect the girl to be more religious slash modest, aka covers and never had sex." I've also seen people get in a relationship with a non-Muslim or a less practicing Muslim, and then guilt trip them about how their past is not Muslim compliant, or make them feel bad about that. But I still want to be with you. But it's like this thing that they hold over them. You gotta
So you're trying to
resolve your
mold them into the perfect Muslim woman
and you
with
never can, like,
manipulation.
even if you manipulate the person into doing everything you want, they still have that past that you can hold over them forever. So that's not good. Don't let anybody make you feel bad about who you are. If there are things about you that could be improved, sure, you should improve them, but don't change for somebody, especially if they themselves are not really doing much to strive towards growth themselves. um, yeah, there's so much I could say about so many bad dating experiences that I've heard about. Um, I'll also mention this. Sometimes people think that it's just, don't date a Muslim man, for example, because that's where all the trouble is. I'll say, even if you're a non practicing Muslim, or, not very religious Muslim, dating and marrying a Muslim woman can be a huge trap and a huge problem. I know somebody who is not very religious, but they married a Muslim woman who they thought was also not very religious. But then she gets to use certain permissions, like, I stay at home because that's what Allah said I can do. And you have to spend all your money on me. I don't have to spend anything. I don't have to work, and so on and so forth. And, families around them, his and hers, will just say, yeah, she kind of has a point. So there are ways for someone who's religious, whether they're a man or a woman, to use that against you. Whether or not that was the intention of the rule does not matter. If that is what the rule says, everyone else will comply, and they can't really do anything about it. So just be careful not to get with somebody who has a different set of values, or a different process of arriving at rules and values and limits than you, because if someday they think that God said or the priest said or the sheikh said so and so, that's going to be a problem in your lives, especially if you bring children into the relationship. Yeah. Um, let me read a couple more live chats and we'll see where we go from there. So Noor Ali Imran says, I was about to consider dating this ex-Muslim. Turns out his reasons for being an atheist was that he hated religious people and found religion inconvenient. Too much hate. What do you think?
Isn't that the reason why you left Islam?
Well, people are going to take that out of context and be like, "Ah, we got him." No,
Finally.
it's not. He's being sarcastic, ironic,
I,
facetious. I don't know. Um, but yeah, that's also something else to consider when people say, you're an ex-Muslim, that person is an ex-Muslim, you're in the same team, you're on the same side. Not necessarily. People might even have the same label of atheist, but they think very different things about what that means to be an
yes.
atheist and why you should be an atheist. So someone leaving Islam doesn't mean that they left because they're so smart and so in tune with their emotions and with the world. Not necessarily. It could be for a multitude of reasons. And if the reason is religious people are stupid and I'm better than them, then that's probably not a person you want to be with. Here's another comment. Osman is asking, I'm just asking out of curiosity. I am from Turkey and dating is quite common and a normal thing here. In other Muslim countries, you do not date at all? Question mark. Dating does not mean having sex. What do you think?
I mean, it varies depending on the country and the community, right? So I would say where I grew up in Dubai, uh, dating was pretty much the same as maybe like in Western context, except less alcohol and definitely less premarital sex. But otherwise, yeah, going out to a club or to a restaurant, yeah, that was pretty normal. But then if you think about other countries, like the one example that comes to mind, even though I've never been there, is like Saudi Arabia. I'm just gonna hazard and guess and say far less common.
I don't know what it's like now, but I can speak for back when I was in high school. Um, my dating life was essentially my high school sweetheart, and I would try to go to a restaurant that would let us sit there because there's the male section and there's the family section, and clearly we weren't family, so it was frowned upon to let us sit together in the family section, even though it's a public place and nothing's happening. But you can't even go on a date like that. So we'd had to like find places that would let us, or communities that would allow us to sit there, and that was dating. But it depends on your social economic status, where you live, the people you live around. And but for most of them, dating does not involve intimacy physically. For some of them it might, even though it's not supposed to. So it really depends on where you ask and where you go. I assume in Turkey it's a lot more lax than in most Muslim countries, given the proximity to Europe and how much of a mixed bag it is with all the different cultures there that aren't just Muslim Turkish people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Uh, Kate says, my ex just ended things because he reverted to Islam, and I'm an atheist. I was open to him following the faith, but he decided he couldn't continue both the relationship and his faith. Well, I am sorry that your relationship ended,
Yeah,
but
it's sad. Yeah, but it's for the best, I think.
it really does sound like it's for the best. Um, what do you think about that part of the live chat where she says, "I was open to him following the faith, but it was him that ended it"? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's tough because in the end of the day, what following that faith it means differs from Muslim to Muslim. So maybe what Kate's saying and what I think a lot of people feel is maybe if they followed Islam in a way in which we were still compatible in all the most important ways and it didn't create a harmful dynamic in the relationship, why not? So to just talk about people in my own family, I had Muslim family members who didn't believe hell was a real thing, or that uh, normal people would go to hell. Definitely not the orthodox Muslim position. But that's just like one example of maybe if you don't believe that your partner is going to hell, or that God will see them as a Allah will see them as a good person, and so you'll be in heaven together, even though you're an atheist. That won't be an issue. But what I find, generally speaking, is that the religious beliefs, whether it's Islam or Christianity or others, they do seep in and cause harm in ways that you might not notice necessarily right away.
Yeah, the difficulty with that, I mean, like the commenter was saying, they were open to their partner converting to Islam. Um, you have no control over what your partner does, and you shouldn't. You can't force them to not convert to Islam. Um, but I don't think you should be not cautious about it, because it depends on what your partner believes Islam is or says he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do. But it gets to a point where the vessel itself is the problem. If they believe that God said to a man, and that's how they get their information and their, what they're supposed to do, that vessel could change. The information in it can change. If the sheikh says something different, or I get this all the time, if they get radicalized by the Instagram or YouTube algorithm or TikTok algorithm, just by coming across videos that guilt trip them, you're not fasting enough, you're not praying enough, you're not controlling your woman enough, and so on and so forth, they could change. So it's not that, once somebody converts to Islam, you can't be around that person. But it's, if you're sharing a life and possibly more lives, if you have children with that person, you don't know what the future will hold in general, but especially not when their method for figuring out what is right and wrong is what the sheikh says, or even their interpretation of what they think God said. That can be very dangerous someday, even if it isn't right now. So somebody had asked earlier what I said about, not being with somebody who comes from a very different ideology. Let me see if I can find that comment.
Yeah.
Is that is that always? Is that about like specific ideologies? Maybe I don't want to be too generic about any comment, but I mean their method of figuring out what is right and wrong. If there's some kind of process and your processes look similar to some extent, then that's good, even if your conclusions differ. But if their process is God said and your process is very different, I think that's a red flag. You shouldn't, a God said person should not be with a let's think this out person. Even though, the God said person uses a lot of rationality and logic and emotions and whatever to arrive at their morality as well. But if there's still that avenue that they could believe something or follow something just because religion says so, then that is a red flag.
It's a really tough position to be in, Kate, and a lot of other people are in that position where they're still in the relationship. I think something that would be helpful to navigate that initially anyway is trying to understand what the motivation is for that person to convert or revert, whatever it happens to be. Like, what are they looking for? Like, what answers are they seeking? And I think their answers, if they're honestly sharing them, will give you a good indication of whether or not this is something that could continue as a relationship. With the caveat of what you mentioned earlier, Aladdin, that these things can evolve. So maybe someone starts off going back to Islam because they're afraid about dying, or they just lost a relative, but that can morph into things like, I can't stand the woke agenda, I think all homosexuals should burn, things like that. And I know that sounds extreme, but there's a slippery slope when it comes to those things. People can really change their beliefs on those kinds of subjects.
And that's why the process is what matters. So if someone has a similar process to yours and your process isn't, I heard it on a podcast, therefore it's true, or I heard Aladdin and Alim talk about it, therefore that's my opinion, that's not a good process.
No,
Doesn't
no.
matter if it's Joe Rogan or if it's the Aladdin show. Either way, you need to find a way to vet the opinions and supposed facts that you learn about. And if someone's process involves taking information unquestionably, be it from a godly source or from a human that they idolize, that is a big red flag. Yeah. Summon OK says, as an ex-Muslim dating an ex-Christian, I'm occasionally asked why I bother with deconstructing / digging deeper into Islam. I just say I'll stop caring when apostates stop getting killed. Thoughts?
So if you're still there, Summon Koke, is that a question that you're asked by the ex-Christian you're dating, or you're just generally asked that? Curious to know, but just generally speaking, it's the same kinds of questions I think you and I get, Aladdin, where like, oh, you left Islam, why are you still digging into it? Because it isn't just about us. I mean, an element of it is obviously processing our own experiences and trying to make something positive out of it, but a lot of it comes from caring about what's happening to other people, people who don't have the resources or capability or the safety to criticize Islam the way we do. So it's not just about us. I think your answer, okay, yeah, Summon Koke answered in the live chat, asked by their partner. I think that's a good reason that you gave.
I have a different reason. So if I'm being asked why are you doing this, like, on YouTube, then my answer is similar to what you said, Alim. But back when I was, I'm not digging and deconstructing that much anymore myself. Like, there's still stuff I learn without intending to even, but I am past that stage in my deconstruction journey where it was very thorough research, very, almost obsessing over specific questions and having discussions about them and so on. I'm past that stage. But when I was in it, even though I don't believe anymore, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't to confirm that I'm not going to hell, for example, or anything of the sort. It's because there's so much more when Islam is that deep in your life. There's so much more to it than just what's on the surface, like how many times you pray and so on. Even if you drop all that, there's so much about your beliefs, about your fears, about how you view yourself, about how you view others, about what you think is moral and immoral that is related to religion one way or another. So you might, be bored of the topic or be done with deconstructing for a while, and then suddenly it slaps you in the face when you realize that some things are related. Or you could be past that stage. But it doesn't mean that once you say, I am, I believe in this or I don't believe in that, that you're done. Sometimes it takes more work. But of course, it's not good to obsess over a topic forever. So there are people who have been watching this channel casually from the beginning. There are people who used to watch very often and then disappeared. And I have zero hard feelings about that. You shouldn't be just tuned into this topic all the time because it can get exhausting. But for some people, it is a relief. So it really depends on who you ask. Sometimes it's just about reassuring yourself that you're not the only person out there, and that everything you're seeing in social media and everything you're seeing in your family and society is really not all there is. Because if you're one of those people surrounded by Islam, I can understand why you're still digging or you're still watching content like this.
And just to add to what you said, and then we can move on. Something I'm not saying this about your partner, Summon Koke, but sometimes ex-Christians in my personal life ask me, ones who know about the channel and my feelings on Islam. They don't realize it's a bit different leaving Islam compared to leaving Christianity for a lot of the former believers. I would say that's a good thing, that for quite a few people who leave Christianity, the repercussions, there are going to be some repercussions, but they're nowhere near as impactful in many cases as it is for people who leave Islam. And I think that's because, generalizing here a little bit, because I have to, but Islam is more connected to the culture of Muslim communities in the Muslim world and Muslim immigrants all around the world than I think is the case, generally speaking, for Christians. Of course, there's exceptions to that across the world, but generally speaking.
I'll read a couple more live chats.
There's a couple super chats for the cats.
Yes, we'll get.
You better make sure that you funnel those funds for treats for them specifically.
Well, I said it was going to be for a cat tree, not cat treat, cat tree. And I'll find,
I think you've gotten enough at this point for a cat tree and a cat treat.
I hope so. Curing cancer in my free time. Hashtag happy cats. Thank you for the super chat. Kate, thank you as well for the super chat. And Calvin, thank you very much. They say, for the cats and my favorite ex-Muslim YouTubers
Thank you,
out
Calvin.
there. So kind of you.
Okay, so I get half of that, by the way, that last one.
Okay, well, you're not a cat, but sure. You get, like, let's do the math here.
That's 25%.
Exactly.
25%.
You got me. 3 of us and 1 of you. So Kit Kat says, I just want to live life, man. That's a big part of it too. a lot of people they'd rather not have anything to do with this topic. Like there's a comment when I announced this live stream. There was a comment by what I assume is a Muslim who said, "Why are you even just open a dating app? It's simple. Just open a dating app and date whoever you want. Why are you even bringing Islam into this? You can just move on and not have Islam be any part of this." In a perfect world, yes. And if you are capable of doing that, please go ahead. Like I said, you don't have to date somebody from a Muslim background or an ex-Muslim or whatever. But for a lot of people, the topic of Islam is shoved down their throats, whether they want to or not. For example, there are people who are openly non-religious to their family members, and yet when it comes to big milestones like marriage, for example, or a relationship, when they announce that milestone to their family, it's like a whole new shock for them. It's not just that the person left Islam, but then they realize deeply that they're also doing what they see as haram or immoral things, like having a partner, or even marrying someone who's not a Muslim or a person of the book, like a Jew or a Christian, which is technically allowed in Islam if you're marrying a Jewish or a Christian woman, not man. So it's not that we want to make it about Islam. Most of us just want to live. So we're talking about what happens in this attempt to just live. Yeah. Ex-Muslim Asia says, "I was forced to divorce my wife just because I expressed doubts in Islam. I didn't expect the reaction would be so hostile, but Muslims are unpredictable, even the most caring or close ones to you." I'm sorry you had to, Asia. But if she didn't fight for you, if she wasn't on your side, if she thinks so differently, despite it being so sad that you were forced to do it, perhaps this was for the best for you. Because, even if everyone was hostile and your wife wasn't on your side, then what's the point of staying with that person?
Yeah, I think that would definitely shake my trust going forward, and would make me very hesitant to get in a relationship with anyone who has a background in Islam for understandable reasons. That's a scary thing, that even someone that you've been with, someone you've been close to, maybe for decades, could turn on you like that. And that's, I think, one of the saddest things that Islam, one of the worst harms that Islam causes.
Yeah. I've seen stories like this go both ways. Like Haram Doodle, for example, sharing her experience with us, saying, "I was an agnostic cultural Muslim when I met my partner, who was already an atheist. We talked openly about religion, found the word ex-Muslim together, and still help each other unlearn Islam." I'm happy that it went well for you.
So
Haram Doodle.
happy, yeah.
And for ex-Muslim Asia, I hope that this is a fresh start for you someday. It might be too soon, the wounds are too fresh, but you can always rebuild. You can always continue your life. And I know it might be tempting or easy to think about this as a huge loss and similar situations as all the things that you lost, but there's so much that you gained by not having to be in that relationship under false pretenses for the rest of your life. I saw a comment from someone who was asking, well, if I have to pretend outwardly to, my family with my partner, why don't I just marry a Muslim and pretend to one more person? And if you really, really have to, like if that's your life and it's at the end of the day, you're the one making these decisions, I would advise against it, because if you have to pretend anyway, you should at least have home where you don't have to pretend at home.
Like you mean like a refuge, like someone, like a safe space.
Sure.
Yeah.
That word is very stigmatized for some reason, but yeah, like a place where you can be yourself. Because sometimes when I say safe space, people just shut their brain down and they're like, oh, so you're one of them softies. No, like a place, and you can understand this concept. When you come home, you don't want to wear a mask anymore. Like, remember COVID when people had to wear a mask all the time? You come home, you take it off. Some women take off their bras, some men take off their pants. You just feel comfortable. You can be yourself. You're not putting on a face for anybody. You should aim to have a partnership where that's what it's like at home, even if you have to pretend to other people.
Very well said. And for the record, I'm a take off the pants once I get home kind of guy.
We didn't need to know that, but the record now shows that.
Everything else stays on, just the pants.
You keep the bra on, just the pants come off. Just Fish says, Aladdin, please more Quran animation stories. I will do my best. I am doing so many things at once, but I will try someday. I'm surprised I got away with doing it several times already. Um, but yeah, we'll see. Maybe I'll do it again. By the way, is my camera lagging or
You are currently frozen.
okay? I'll be back in a second. I assume it's fine. Um, let's read another comment. Unless you have an interjection, I'll read another one.
No, no, go ahead. I'm looking at some too.
Noor says, Apostate Aladdin talking about masks. I know the irony of it all. Okay, here's another one. Calvin says, it's understandable that you want to stick to some habits from your Muslim past. I, to be honest, could not be with a person who doesn't want a shattafa in the household. That is like a bidet. I am in agreement. I still have a bidet wherever I go. I install a bidet. It doesn't have to be just linked to religion.
Is that like a relationship non-negotiable for you as well? You have to be
Yeah.
pro bidet.
Yes. Yes. That is one of my, or they call them like red flags. This is a brown flag.
Oh God. Oh, don't go there.
I'm sorry. I had to. I had to. Um, for some reason, my camera is giving me grief. Are we back? Yeah, we're back.
You're back. All right, awesome.
Awesome. Uh, A says, I was a proper devotee for 25 years of my life. The first time I had what? I discovered your video of sex and Islam because I was just looking for validation to calm the guilt inside me. Here we are now. Well, welcome to the channel. I'm glad that you found that video when you did. I'm still surprised that I made that video, honestly, because I talk about a lot of very personal things, but clearly it is important. So I'm glad that you found us.
Mhm.
Okay, so on the topic of dating and Islam, do you have any other stories to share?
Well, one question I was going to ask you was, have you ever had similar kinds of challenges in dating Christians? The reason I ask is because I have a story related to someone I dated who was an Arab Christian.
Hmm. I don't think I like maybe went on a date maybe, but I haven't actually dated a Christian for similar reasons. So people, some people call me hateful of Muslims, some people call me hateful of Christians. I'm not hateful of anybody, but it's again about values and priorities and where we arrive at our values. So we might agree on so many things, a Christian and I, but if someday they decide that God doesn't like this thing and I don't think this thing is bad, especially when it comes to dealing with children, that would be a problem. So I haven't gotten really far in dating a Christian, and I don't think I ever would.
Mhm. I agree. I think it comes down to the values. And one way I learned that was I went on a date with an Arab Christian. And on the first date, she was very direct and businesslike. Like she gave me a bunch of almost interview style questions just to I guess suss out if I could move on to the next stage of the application process. And one of the questions she asked, and this is mind you, maybe 15 minutes after first meeting her, something like that. She asked me if we had a son, and the son came to us and said, "I want to transition into becoming a woman. I want to be, I'm a woman. How would you handle that?" And it became clear to me that her attitude would be to see that as a problem and to try and stop that from happening.
Mhm.
And that's not how I feel about it. I think I should communicate that clearly. And I can't remember what the rest of the conversation was exactly, but like I expressed that I disagreed, and I think the subject segued to something about pride parades, and I shared that I was so frustrated with how people from a Muslim background would say, why do they even need to have a pride parade? Why can't they just do what they do and keep it private? And I said that that was like a very disgusting attitude to have about it. And we kind of moved on. I saw her maybe two more times, and she revealed to me that she thought I was bisexual. I'm not bisexual. But I asked her, why do you think I'm bisexual? And she said, well, because you mentioned the Pride Parade and that you were upset about how Muslims look at it. And so I looked at her and I said, so you think just me supporting LGBTQ rights and not agreeing with that criticism makes me somehow have to be LGBTQ? And she didn't say yes, but clearly that's what she thought.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, to just like your subject, comes down to values, whether it's a Christian or a Hindu or whatever religion they happen to follow.
And how they arrive at those values is very important.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like it is a very, as Osman says, what a very specific question to ask.
There
on a
were
first
others.
date.
There were others. That's just the one that I happen to remember because it was the
Mhm.
most surprising one.
And I want to comment on that for a sec. The obsession that a lot of groups of people have with trans people is crazy. It's very hard to understand for such a small percentage of any population why there's so much attention, negative attention, on them. And it becomes this issue that we need to solve, that it's an issue and that we need to solve it, because if we don't, it will spread. So one thing is the distinction between places where it's safe to transition and be openly, be it gay, bi, somewhere on that spectrum, or transsexual or non-binary. There are places where it's safer to do that, so you see more of those people. Or there are cities where it's known to be a safer space where people congregate. So then, like San Francisco, it has more gay people than a lot of other places. It's not that making it normal in that area makes people who wouldn't otherwise have been that become gay or trans or whatever. But that is the concern that a lot of, especially religious, but not just that, a lot of religious people would have, that if you are okay with it, then you're making it okay for other people. And then before we know it, most of us are going to be gay or trans or something, which is not how that works at all. But in a place where it's not okay, you get a lot of self-hating people who wouldn't even know to identify with that label or that identity because they hate it, because they were told to hate it. And if they do identify with it, they're secretive about it. But yeah, the fact that was a first date issue, the chances of your son or daughter being trans are very, 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 very slim to begin with. But instead of asking you if our son is disabled, for example, or if our son has Down syndrome, or if our son or daughter has whatever, a genetic condition, did we test for these genetic conditions? They didn't talk about any of that. They're talking about if they're trans. So that obsession is something to be studied someday.
Yes, because clearly in her case, her mentality was, oh, I have to deal with so many of these men who are just like woke people, so I have to make sure that he isn't another one of those woke people. She didn't use those words, but that clearly was the motivation because she had it already.
Let's see. We got a bunch of different directions that the comments are taking us. Nini says, post more videos. The other friendly ex-Muslims are Christian. The irony. Yeah, the irony indeed. Let's see. Areen says, my brother is an ex-Muslim, but he's still excited about dividing the inheritance the Islamic way since it benefits men and he'd get 50% of it.
Like they used the word excited.
Yeah, excited. Who are you excited to
Can't wait.
die? Mom, dad, I love you, but I love your money more. That's crazy. Well, I hope that you don't turn out to be ex-Muslim men like that, because again, like I said, just being an ex-Muslim is not a virtue. So just because someone has left Islam doesn't mean they're a better person or that they're a good person. Bling is asking, I'm a closeted ex-Muslim, so my parents expect me to marry a Muslim woman. Is finding myself another ex-Muslim partner the only option? What do you think?
See, this is where we're talking about like can we stumble upon like a kind of like haram doodles sort of situation? I don't know if it's the only option, but it would work very nicely to find an ex-Muslim partner who kind of has the same dynamic with their parents, so they get where you're coming from and they've navigated that challenge as well. And then you can kind of have that secret together, and you have someone to support you, navigating that very difficult thing to have to navigate. I don't know if it's the only option though. What do you think?
It's hard to tell without knowing their life because, are you talking about, do you live in the Middle East or in a Muslim majority country? Do you live somewhere else? How important is family and keeping up appearances to you? How reliant are you on your community? And there's so many factors to this that sometimes you think that this is your only option, but it isn't. So, are you prioritizing your family's wishes more than your happiness? Or do you genuinely see no other option for a partner except for Muslims where you live? I don't know. It's hard to tell. But I do hope that you find a way to be happy and be with somebody without having to pretend, at least with them. You can pretend with family members and so on if you're forced to. Whether or not you do, that really is up to you and your situation. But at the very least, I hope you have a comfortable life at home because everyone deserves to find love.
Very well said. Do you see the comment from Siadu? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I don't know if you want to put that up or not.
I sure let's go for it. Siadu says
Yeah.
it's hard to date non-Muslims because they will never relate to you, just like how hard it is to date a Muslim as well, and knowing that there will be no future with them because they will try to convert you. Um, it depends. What do you think?
I can relate to definitely. Well, the second one is most likely true. Either they will try to convert you, or their family will, or something like that. I can relate to the first part because, again, as we were talking about earlier on, there's this whole wealth of shared background that uh, you won't have with someone who's a non-Muslim. And I think an important thing to note too is they won't have that experience of leaving Islam as well. Like, so, especially if it's something that was really difficult, something that you struggled with for years and that kind of shaped the kind of person you are today, for them to just be, let's say, oh yeah, I grew up in an atheist family. It's very different. I'm not saying that it's impossible to connect with them, but you do miss out on those connections.
Well, I'm going to say that I used to think so, that I have to find an ex religious person so that they understand, so that I don't have to do a lot of explaining. But I found more often than not that the people that I met, at least, not all non Muslims, of course, not all any group, but the people that I met or selected were understanding and willing to listen and learn and understand. And you don't have to dump all of your problems on them or expect them to understand every aspect of your deconstruction journey, but just to be supportive in the ways that you need. In some of those ways, you still need support in other ways, and you can't just have your partner be all of your support,
Yep.
regardless of their background. Um, so no, it's not a deal breaker. You shouldn't expect relationships to be easy either. Like, you're not meeting someone who already knows you and your family and your sense of humor and your likes. You're still teaching the person a lot about you. So that's just one more thing that you will teach them anyway. So I don't think it's a deal breaker. I used to think so, but the person I'm with is not religious, never really has been, and they're perfectly capable of understanding and empathizing and accommodating for any problems that I might face because of my religious background in the past. But that also is not a pass for you to, make excuses and say, well, I have religious trauma or it's because of how I was raised or whatever. And you just keep going on in the same pattern. You still have to grow as well. And someday, hopefully, it won't be as big of an issue or as big of a part of your life as it used to be.
Yeah, yeah, and just to share on my side, so the person I'm in a relationship with is a non-Muslim, not from any Muslim background, and again, can empathize, understands the challenges, supports what I do with this channel, and I think that that's really helped me in motivating me to keep going is to have that support. And I've let go of that notion that I'll never be able to connect with someone unless they're a Palestinian ex-Muslim who also grew up in the Middle East and then moved to Canada. So it doesn't have to be all those things that you check off a box onto.
Agreed. Yeah. Um, let's see. For a funny comment here, Mene Tears says, I was a Muslim when my boyfriend left religion. Why are you dating as a Muslim? Astaghfirullah. But I didn't leave him because I couldn't find someone better, to be honest. That's not a good mentality, regardless of what religion either of you are, but I hope you know that now. Anyway, they're saying, I couldn't find someone better. I thought I couldn't find someone better, is what you mean to say. So I wanted to understand why he did leave, and I ended up leaving too. So that's funny. Um, would you read
That's a
this?
fascinating story.
It happens.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Sometimes religious people would look at a story like this, whether it's Islam or Christianity or whatever, and say, well, aha, it's your boyfriend who made you leave Islam or Christianity. It's funny that you hear it from like both sides. You hear the same thing from Christians as well as you do from Muslims. And it might be tempting to pin the blame on something or someone. But sometimes the reality is when you actually listen and hear someone out, why don't you believe in this? You start to think, wait a second, you kind of make sense. Whether or not you're going to be my partner in the future doesn't matter, but you do make sense about this. But yeah, I don't know if they're still together or not. If you are together, I hope it's not because you think you can't do better. That's not a good reason to stay with someone.
No, and yet it's a very common one in with a lot of people, and I get it.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike Money, for the super chat. How on brand. Hello, fellow ex-Muslims. Any of you contend with solipsism upon leaving Islam? It is basically the idea that only you exist. I went deep into it. So I guess, like, how do you know that anything is real? How do you know that you're not dreaming right now and nothing else exists?
Yeah. Aladdin, you're not real. All of you watching aren't real. All I really know is I exist, and I'm visualizing myself doing this YouTube video right now.
So the best you could visualize is collaborating with another small YouTuber. Like that's the limit of your dream right there.
That,
Dream
that
big, come on.
that's all I got. So
Yeah.
it's the brain and the vat thing, which I think is more familiar to a lot of people. I mean, I can speak for myself. I did look into it. I'm aware of it. In the end of the day, and I'm really oversimplifying here, but you kind of have to function in society as if other people are real and that the world around you is real, or you're going to start heading into some major problems very quickly.
I mean, the way I think about it is if that is true, right? If I'm just a brain in a vat, what like there's nothing I could do about it. I can't escape the vat
Exactly,
and go
exactly.
build a body, so might as well. It's kind of like that what's that movie with the slow-mo bullets? The very popular
The
one.
Matrix,
The Matrix, yes.
the
Um,
movie with the slow mo bullets.
it's been a while. But
Wow,
you knew exactly what I was talking about. That scene with the guy bending
one
backwards.
of the most famous movies ever made.
Yeah, 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 the guy with the trench
How are
coat.
we such good friends when you know so little about movies?
Dump me then, do something about it. Or let's watch The Matrix. Come over. Um, yeah, so in The Matrix, I seem to remember a character who knew that, he took the pill. He knows that all of this is fake, but he wants to stay in it anyway because, what's the alternative? So the way that I look at it is I can't investigate whether I am a, brain in a vat or not. So I could just go deep into depression or, pointlessness, or I could just live the simulated life that I have. So just live the simulated life that you have, because even if what you're experiencing is not real, if your brain is receiving the signals, if you're feeling it, then it's as good as real. Um, but obviously, that is, don't take that out of context and say that I value
Mm.
delusions over reality. But this is as good as we can verify. I think, therefore, I am, I suppose.
By the way, this is the subject of the movie Inception. Have you ever heard of Inception? I
Yeah,
don't want to
yeah,
presume
I've heard
anymore.
of Inception. Yes,
Yeah.
the one with the spinny top thingy. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. There, you got it.
yeah, and the bullets. There were bullets in that. Were there?
There were a lot of bullets in that
There
movie.
were a lot of bullets there. Um, Mine Tears is clarifying. She meant, yes, I meant I couldn't find someone better, and I actually just misworded it. Well, I'm glad that your partner is great, not that you're settling. Um, what else? Do you have any other topics, or should I keep reading the live chat?
Maybe I know we kind of moved on past it, but maybe the Gerwalk
Sure.
comments that I highlight, like for Gerwalk's experience.
Sure. So Gorok says some Christian women are date material, though I was in the closet in 2008 because I had close friends that were gay or that supported LGBTQIA activities or activists. Uh, I would roll out that I had gay best friends when we first start talking to weed out the bigots.
Hmm.
That's one way to do it.
One way to do it, yeah.
Um, I remember making a TikTok back when I was on TikTok about how, like, if I were to have a conversation with my family and I'm trying to, they say something homophobic, for example, or a homophobic trope comes up in, a Middle Eastern movie or show or whatever, and I say something against it, or I say that that is not true, their assumption is usually, wait, so are you saying that you're gay? Kind of like that date that you had with the Christian woman. So are you saying that you're bi? So yeah, some people might start accusing you of being part of that group, but at that point, do you really care? It doesn't matter if they mislabel you as gay when you're not.
Yeah, like I think that's going to be common to a lot of people from like the Muslim world is, so I'm in Canada, I'm in my mid 30s, and I'm not married. I guarantee you, I have relatives who suspect that I'm gay because of that, or that I've been seduced by the Western world and it's sin, and I'm just having depraved sex in nightclubs while I get drunk and get high on drugs, and so on and so forth.
Oh, I have a story related to some of what you said. No, don't hear me out. Pause.
Okay, everyone heard it here first. Okay,
Pause.
which
Okay,
which which part of what I just said jogged your
you'll
memory?
see. You'll see. The whole partying and sex and stuff. So, this happened like within the last couple of years. I already had the YouTube channel at this point, and most people that I meet don't know anything about Aladdin, but sometimes I tell people or even just vaguely allude to it if it's relevant. And I met this man from India who seemed to be Muslim. So I met him at his workplace very late at night, and he had a name tag, and it seemed like it was an Arabic name, so he's probably Muslim. So I made some conversation because he seemed like there were signs that he's on the LGBTQ
Yeah.
spectrum. So I was curious to know, like, is he a cultural Muslim? Is he a practicing Muslim? So I asked him, by the way, your name, are you a Muslim? And he said, yes, Alhamdulillah, I am. And I was like, whoa, okay, I misread the situation. And he asked me, are you? I said, I used to be, but I'm not. And he asked me, so what are you, like, he started whispering, even though there was nobody around. So what, you're a Christian now? I was like, no, I don't believe in these like ideas of religion. And then we started talking, and he told me he's new in the country, and he doesn't have a lot of friends. He works late shifts. So I thought, let me offer him to take him out for dinner, just to show him the city, or like to have somebody that he knows in the city. And as we started talking more that same day, he started hitting on me, and I was like, thank you, not interested, but flattered. And he turns out he's bi, and somehow, or claims that he's bi, and somehow still keeps religion as some part of his identity. And then when I told him that I don't believe, he asked me, so, like, do you have a lot of girlfriends or boyfriends? Like, do you party a lot? I'm like, no, I don't really do that stuff. He's like, but why not? And I said, because I don't want to. So it sounds like he was aching to do that stuff, or maybe he does do that stuff. And, based on some other conversations that we had, he does do a lot of that stuff. But for some people, they think that the only thing holding people back from being party animals is religion. So if you don't have religion, then your desires are unleashed, and you could be a party animal without any accountability or any harm to yourself. But yeah, long story short, I cut him off because he kept incessantly hitting on me in uncomfortable ways. The Muslim man kept hitting on me in uncomfortable ways, which is mind blowing to me. And I hope that, he did apologize for it and stuff, but I really hope that he undoes so much of what he learned from religion. Because have you ever met a gay Muslim man who's also sexist and misogynistic at the same time? It's wild to me. It's a weird combination. Yeah.
At the same time, just to like show empathy for this kind of person, I get it, because you have all of these values and beliefs that come from Islam, and but then you have your own personal experiences and what you think is right and what is wrong that doesn't match with Islam, but you don't want to lose it. You don't want to lose that religion. And so doing that whole cherry picking thing, I know I criticize it a lot, and I try not to be too judgmental about it, because at the end of the day, I get it. Because when Islam is so rooted in your identity, it's not so simple to just say, ah, whatever. I no longer buy any of this stuff. I think the more common thing you'll find is that people will find some way to integrate what they're all about with Islam. So that's how you end up with, uh, mosques for queer Muslims and things like that.
Not that that's a common thing, but you're quoting one or two examples of that.
Yeah, very very uncommon, but I think it speaks to how there is a thing to how when push comes to shove, people are will be very reluctant to give up their religion, even when the religion literally says to kill you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, well, it depends on which part of it you look at. For some people, it's good enough to say it's not in the Quran, so so it's fine. But there's so much that's not in the Quran. If we just look at the Quran, Islam would not really be what it is. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. But that's a topic for another day, I suppose.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah. Noor says, I once went on a lunch date with a gay Muslim man. By the end of our 2-hour date, I was done with him. The way he was reinforcing the heteronormative husband-wife dynamics between us, he'd be the hubby. Okay, I just glued to this. Noor is a man. So somehow this gay Muslim man that he went on a date with wanted to be the more macho man and like the husband in the relationship. That's odd. I've can't say that I've seen that expression before, but again, we want to extend some empathy to that person. I'm sorry that they became that way, but obviously, Noor, I'm glad you don't have to put up with that. Definitely not dating material. Let's read another one.
I think we did that one.
Did that one.
What about that question from? It's kind of irrelevant. Ex-Muslim Asia. I don't know if you see it.
Okay, so that's a loaded question. Would you say Muslim converting to Christian is harm reduction? Depends on what expression of each you're talking about. Generally, I would say, or I used to say this a lot more often before MAGA took over the US and now has become a bigger problem. But I used to think and say that Christianity is a lot more defanged than Islam these days. Like if you go back a few hundred years or 1,000 years, maybe there were a lot of dark periods in the history of Christianity that can be very similar to the history of Islam. But these days, Christianity has a lot less of a grasp on people's lives. That was before, the right-wing conservative MAGA movement has really taken power in the US. So it really depends. Are you the Christian who just believes that Jesus saves and loves everybody and you don't have a lot of possessions because Jesus said don't be, greedy and rich? Or are you an evangelical Christian who foolishly gives a lot of their money to the very rich pastor? Or are you a Christian who furthers political agendas that aren't actually Christian but for some reason seem to be? So I wouldn't just say generally speaking, converting from one religion to another is harm reduction, because at the end of the day, you're still not questioning the method of acquiring information. So if you think God talked to a man in a cave, that's ridiculous. But God incarnated himself as a human being who killed himself to save us from himself. And I'm sure the Christians are not going to like that summary, but some version of that, that's not ridiculous. You're harming yourself by not questioning the method of gaining information here. What do you think?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, next time you say it first, because I don't want to keep stealing your sound bites.
Can we ask this question from Olivia next? Because it's a little bit related. I kind of like this question.
Did you use okay, sure. Olivia is asking, maybe if you're going to come out to everyone as ex-Muslim, maybe saying you're Christian would reduce the shock value.
Another form of harm reduction, I guess you could say.
That really depends on your family and your surroundings.
Because they could be, well, at least he's not a heathen. It sucks that he's Christian, or that they're Christian now, but
I mean,
lesser
yeah.
two evils.
And some Muslims find ways of sort of justifying to themselves, just like marrying a Christian woman. Some Muslims find peace with that, or their
Yeah,
son marrying a Christian woman, and so on. They could also find peace in you becoming a Christian, thinking to themselves, "Well, Allah did say that people of the book do have a shot at heaven, even though they're supposed to renounce these faiths now that Muhammad is the last messenger." But maybe Allah would forgive. Maybe their heart is in the right place. They're still
yeah,
worshiping God, and so
yeah.
on and so forth. Because it does bring into question why the heck Allah in his infinite wisdom. You want to go?
Well, what I was going to say, one potential benefit of saying you're Christian now is you won't be expected to fast during Ramadan. You won't have to do much, really.
That's if they accept you. They could
Yeah,
really be,
if they
yeah.
accept you, yeah. You could
Um,
get out of a lot of stuff. I'm not, just to clarify, I'm not advocating it. I'm
yeah.
just, going along with this thought experiment.
But if they do find a way to make peace with it, it still brings into question, because they would be thinking, maybe this person is confused, but Christianity was originally from Allah and then it got corrupted, allegedly, according to the Islamic narrative. So it's still, loosely the same monotheistic religion. So maybe God's going to forgive them for taking the wrong version of the religion. But it does bring into question, why did Allah make it so confusing if Allah is real, and reveal multiple versions of religions that he knew would get corrupted, and then punish the people who went with the old version somehow. So there's a lot to think about there. But answer is, it really depends on your situation. It might not be perfect to just say that you're a Christian now. And also, again, I don't like pretending or lying. You do what you got to do to protect yourself, but ideally, if you can find a way out of your situation without furthering another lie, that would be the best scenario, if that is attainable. Mike Money, thank you again for the super chat.
Thank you.
They say, thanks for answering. Yes, if solipsism were true, I am God, Allah, Vishnu, Jesus, everything. I'm you, I'm my parents, I'm you guys, you are me. Get out of my body, please. No, I am me, you are you. We're different people. But yes, if solipsism were true, we're all the same. We're all in your head. We're all just voices in your head.
Yeah, and Mike, if you're watching, is the person in your profile picture, is that Corey Stoll, the actor, or is that you? Because if it's you, you look a lot like the actor Corey Stoll.
I don't know who Corey Stoll is, but it seems
Well,
like
because
Mike
you're
stole
not a
his
movie
picture.
guy. Of course, you wouldn't know. It's okay though.
Yeah. Um, Another live chat by Jerwak. Jerwak is asking, what advice or outlines would you give other ex-Muslims to set boundaries? How you will react to protect their physical and mental health when considering dating? What would you say?
There's a lot of areas we could go in here. I think. Can you start first so I can think about what to cover, because I have like 10 different ideas.
Things. Let's see. Boundaries. Well, that depends on what you're comfortable with, but certainly don't, like I said many times in this live stream, do not pretend for your partner, or do not lie to your partner to seem more attractive or more acceptable to them, and avoid, pretending to their family too. Unless, again, every situation is different, but if it's really something you got to do once a year during Thanksgiving or whatever, that is not the same as you going to their house every weekend and pretending to be a Muslim couple, for example, or a Christian couple or whatever. So try to be your authentic self as much as, your situation allows.
What I'd add to that is, I think it comes down to the question of trust. I think no matter what it is, like whether you're considering dating a Muslim, or someone who might react negatively towards finding out that you're an ex-Muslim, I think you have to slowly and steadily get those other people to earn your trust. You can't just spill everything right away, especially if it's vulnerable information about you. And an added aspect to that is, maybe it would be a good idea to mention certain things that that could be that could indicate whether you're aligned in terms of your values or not. So mention the Pride Parade that's happening soon in your city, for example, or whatever it happens to be, or talk about some of the heavier subjects without necessarily expressing your opinion on it, like what happens after death.
Yeah. Ria M is asking, Aladdin, drop some game, please. So let me give you a pickup line. This is a halal pickup line, and I might have said this before. Girl, first when I saw you, I said, MashaAllah. And then I thought about it and I said, Inshallah. There
You
you go.
came up with that very fast. Like you had that one loaded and ready to, like you've used it recently.
No, my partner is not Muslim, so my Muslim game is lost on them.
Oh, by the way, wait, it is Corey Stoll, isn't it? I was
It
right.
is. Yeah.
What
It
do I
is
get
Corey
for that?
Stoll. Nothing.
Great actor.
I don't watch that channel, but I have seen this mascot before. Have you heard of our Lord and Savior Doug the Rock with googly eyes, which created all things? TMC asks.
I have to be
No.
honest, I don't even understand half of that question.
Yeah, you don't know some of these words. I think that's a channel called Deconstruction Zone, Justin. I will check it out. I haven't been watching,
The Rock with Google. Oh, so it's kind of
yeah.
like the flying spaghetti monster sort of thing.
I assume it's the mascot for that channel, or like a recurring character. I love it when channels have that. I don't have one, but I should. Theo, is that 25 Saudi riyals? Thank you, Theo. Tal Amrak. Thank you. It reminds me of my Saudi days. What questions can I ask Muslims to know if they're atheists without losing my head or revealing I'm an ex-Muslim? You know, safety first. Give us a. I mean, we have already asked like the questions about progressive values can sometimes be a good litmus test, but that's
Yes.
yeah. What else?
I think what someone mentioned, I mean, it might be a bit too direct, so a bit risky, but just bringing up the subject of someone leaving Islam somehow, like let's say you happen to be an Egyptian, mention, oh, have you heard of this? And you're talking to an Egyptian, have you heard of this Sharif Jabir guy? And see what they say.
Well, if you're Egyptian, you don't say Sharif Jabir.
You would say
But
Gabir. Sure,
yes.
sure, sure. I knew you were going to make that joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, like things along those lines. But again, like tread with caution. Like you kind of have to gauge how much you can share without it being a bit risky.
You could also ask questions like within Islam. So without revealing that you don't believe anymore, you could ask, what do you think, like, why do you think God revealed so many prophets and so many religions when he meant Islam the whole time? Or,
Is that a first date question?
I mean, it's better than the, what would you do if you had a trans daughter or a trans son question?
I'm not going to argue with that.
Or you could ask something like, what do you think happens to us after we die? They could just go on the whole,
That's a good one, I think, because it's general and it's something that I think anyone could understand why you would want to ask that question.
Yeah. And if they start to, get suspicious or ask you, we know what happens after we die. What are you talking about? And then you say, yeah, but which version though? Because there's like the interrogation of the, like in Islam, the interrogation in the qabr, in the grave. There's also, that the day of judgment. Like, what can you give me some clarity about that? And that's a way to evade actually going deeper into that conversation, but you get your answer. Or you could ask them, why do you think God created most people knowing they wouldn't believe in Islam and knowing they will go to hell? But I don't know, like if that's a conversation starter or you get there somewhere in your chat. But yeah, you can ask them questions, like philosophical questions, not with the purpose of trying to get them out of Islam or anything, but just to get their perspective. And maybe they have thought of it and they do have a perspective that doesn't align with Islam, and maybe they'll hesitantly say, well, I know I'm not supposed to say this, but so and so, and that's how you have your in. But it is a complicated process for sure. But don't feel bad if you have to retreat and just pretend to be Muslim because you don't want to get in trouble. Because at the end of the day, be your authentic self if you can, if it's safe to do so. But don't deceive people on purpose for your own benefits. But also don't tell them the truth if you're going to get hurt.
Couldn't have said it better than myself.
We need a button for that.
Gerwalk made a comment that inspired a question for me to ask you.
Sure.
What about if you're an ex-Muslim and you meet someone who labels themselves as a progressive Muslim,
Oh boy.
which is becoming more and more of a common term?
Oh boy. What does that mean though, progressive Muslim? Because there is, for example, a subreddit called Progressive Islam, and I used to browse that subreddit before I left Islam even, and at first it feels nice that there are other people out there who think that human trafficking and slavery is bad, right? But then the way that they express that is either it didn't happen or it happened but it was necessary but God was trying to end it. So the deeper you go into their beliefs, the more that you feel like they're trying to gaslight you or themselves into keeping their Muslim identity and keeping their religion while also having progressive values. If they find a balance, good for them. But I find it hard to be with a person who isn't on solid ground and could also fall on one side or the other, or could fall back into more extremist ideas, because if you go by the book, they're wrong. They don't really have a solid footing for what they're saying. I'm not saying that the conservative Islam is the one true religion, or that progressives should stop practicing the way that they do. It's just that it might be a pendulum. It's not a stable position to be in. So, yeah.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I saw Noor's comment. You did that on purpose, right?
No, I didn't.
I was
I
wondering
did
if
not.
you did or not.
It's contagious. Jordan Peterson. See, that's goes to say that Jordan Peterson asking what does something mean, asking for a definition, is not bad in and of itself. But if I do this to every question you ask me, then
he's ruined it. He's ruined it. He's ruined asking that. Fair question sometimes. Oh, someone asked me to drop some game too.
That's me. Find you a man who would install a bidet in your house. Been there, done that multiple times. Yeah, Secular Spirit, drop some game, please. I am tripping.
Judgment Day must have happened already because I met you and I must be in Jannah. How's that one?
Okay, give us one that's not related to Islam. Okay, because imagine some white girls like, well, what are you talking about? So,
oh my, I'm blanking here. I ain't got no game.
Did it hurt when you fell from heaven? You sinful, filthy Eve. Yeah.
True story. The person I'm in a relationship with now, the first message I sent her had to do with the philosopher Slavoj Žižek. I asked her what she thought about Žižek. So I wouldn't be surprised if none of you have heard of that. But that is the level of my game, and it worked. That's the most surprising thing. It actually worked.
So you date philosophically minded people?
I try to.
Yeah. Maybe this is too much to share, but TMI. But the person that I'm with right now on our first date, apparently my game, or what signaled to her that I was really interested, was that I looked at her lips for a little too long. That's how good I am. I don't even need to say anything. I just look, and that's my game. So
were you intentionally looking at her lips?
No, not at all. That's subconscious game.
Mm-hmm.
I am
she read that cue.
Yeah, she's subconsciously picking up on it. It's just all in the background. So you can't teach that, right? And I'm not saying you should go and emulate my methods, but for me,
I'm loving the people commenting on Žižek. Slavoj game. Yeah, I'm all for that.
I would love to do an impression of him, but I've never done one before, so I'm not going to try live. Nini says, these guys are shy. Are we though? Would you consider yourself a shy person?
Maybe I used to be, but I think I had to let that go when I decided to just post videos on YouTube.
That's a big part of it. Hello You's asking, you just lowered your gaze, right? Aladdin was just shy and looking down from her eyes. You got me. Yeah, no. Ricky says, I'm going to look at so many lips now.
That's the secret. Who knew?
Yeah. Aladdin face card. Yeah. It's so good. That's why I wear a mask, because if I didn't, you guys would be so distracted. You wouldn't be listening to me. So That's why I wear a mask.
For anyone who's a fan of The Office, there's that episode where Dwight is having issues with Angela because he killed her cat. And she tells him that she can't even look at him in the face anymore, look him in the eyes anymore. And he says, just look at me, right, like look right above here. It's an
It's an
old
old
sales
salesman
trick.
trick. When he says, "I got you a cat. I named him Garbage because he eats garbage." Yeah, good times. Um,
That cat just needed a bath. Totally
yeah,
fine.
a garbage cat is still a cat.
Hmm.
Is that right, Apu? It's right here. He has gained a lot of weight. I don't know if anybody remembers him.
All muscle.
Sure. Yeah, he's been on that gym
He's
regiment, you know?
he's been bulking.
Yeah, no partner, no problem. Um, we've kind of strayed off
Yeah,
topic.
I think maybe we should wrap up.
Yeah, okay.
Uh,
How was the stream, guys? Let us know.
yeah, let
Feedback
us know.
below. We do this again? Especially since I've been busy lately. I'm still gonna make videos, but if you want, we could just make this a weekly or bi-weekly thing and pick a topic of the week. But it'll just be less research than usual. So I hope you guys are okay with that.
Mm.
Yeah. Any final
Before
thoughts?
before we go off the air, can I ask you a completely irrelevant question to the subject of the stream, and then
Absolutely
ask everyone
not.
watching a
Sure.
completely relevant question?
Sure.
Okay, so I'll ask you your question first. So, if in some way, I don't know how this would happen, but let's say Joe Rogan's people reached out to you and asked if you would want to come on the Joe Rogan Experience, would you to basically talk about what you do on the channel? Would you say yes or no?
Why? Why do they want me? Like, how did they notice me? What do they hope to gain out
See
of
how
it?
suspicious ex-Muslim content creators are?
Well, some of us. What's the wait? Someone is spamming apostate prophet as a psycho in the live chat. Why are you telling me that? Okay. Ban user, delete their comments. Thank you. Bye bye. Do they think I'm apostate prophet? Anyway, I would also want to know who their sponsors for that episode specifically are. Because imagine I'm talking there, and in the middle of it, they're like, these, these blue pills are great for your manhood, and blah blah blah. Yeah, I don't know if I, or these mushrooms are supposed to make you smarter. I don't believe in the stuff that they peddle. I would be suspicious of why, but there's a possibility that that could be good. I'd have to be very careful though about what
Yeah,
it is that they want to talk about, what I'm saying, how I present myself, and also the influx of people that will notice me. It's almost a dream and a nightmare scenario at the same time. So,
yeah. I figured you'd say as much. Yeah.
yeah,
And a last question I just want to ask people watching, because I've been fascinated by this YouTube channel, and not necessarily in a good way. Just curious to hear your thoughts. Has anyone heard of or watched this channel called Caleb Hammer? That's the name of the person who runs the channel. It's basically someone who yells and berates people for being bad with money. So curious to know if anyone's watched that, because it gets like a ton of views, and it is one, I find it one of the most unpleasant things I've ever seen online. Just people being unpleasant towards each other for an hour and a
some people are into that.
half. TNC knows about Caleb.
Some people are into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I've watched that channel, and I'm glad I haven't come across it. Um, yeah. Zay Cuppy's asking if we're going to have callers. Not today, unfortunately, because it's a whole other system to take on callers. It would be difficult to do with two people, and it would also make one of us kind of redundant. So maybe another week. I'll try to do a call-in live stream. Just keep checking the channel. I'll be posting about it once it's ready. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Secular Spirit. Don't forget to subscribe to whichever channel you're not on right now. And stay tuned. And as always, what was it? Do you remember, Secular Spirit?
Um, it's been a while. Stay curious, ask questions, and always
Get the
pay
hell
your
out.
taxes on time.
Get the hell out. I would never say that. Um, no, it's think critically
And
and
think for
think for
yourself.
yourself.
There. I just
There you
needed the
go.
first half.
And consider watching one of these videos next.
Bye bye, everyone.
Bye.